another episode of Postpartum in the Raw, where we are having real talk with real parents, really, really raw. Welcome to our show today, Anu Gosai of Red Butterfly. How are you today, Anu?
I'm very well, thanks, and you. Thanks for asking.
I'm so excited to have you on today and to hear your story and your postpartum journey and how
Mm.
it led you to where you are. And so I want to ask, before you got pregnant, culturally, in your family, anything, did you have any idea of what to expect out of your postpartum experience? And if so, how did what you expected differ from what you actually experienced?
Yeah, from hearing stories in my family, I kind of had an idea of um like what would happen. So usually, like in our family in Mauritius, at least, as you know, I'm from Mauritius and I live in South Africa. In Mauritius, what I've seen with my cousins is their mom, they would go stay by their mother, and their mother would look after them postpartum. So that was something that was my expectation. So my expectation was my mother must come from Mauritius to look after me while I have my baby. So, and I'm very grateful that I did get to have that. That my mom came to South Africa for 3 months. She came a month just before birth, just in case I go into labor, and then she stayed for 2 months postpartum. And for me, that made a huge difference. So that, like I thought, I'm a person who's so independent, used to doing her own thing, but having my mom there really, really, really helped. And there was a few things that she came prepared herself. As I said, like there have been cousins who've had babies before me, so she had her own list of things that she was expected to do as a granny, not just for me but for the baby as well. So I think for me, having my own baby really gave me appreciation of the things that we do culturally, and some of the things, very funny enough, what led to my story is I refused to do one of the things. I was like, I'm not doing that. And then,
Wow.
and the irony of it all is, as I look back and the more I dive into womb work and helping other women with their fertility and postpartum, you know what? It's all those things my mother was telling me postpartum. And I feel like, mm, maybe she had a point there, but it feels like this cultural knowledge. I didn't want to accept it, but now seeing it in books, I'm believing it more. I'm like, maybe I should have believed her in the first place. But
So let's talk about that because I'm guessing a lot of what your mom brought to the table was passed down and it was
yeah,
cultural knowledge and it wasn't necessarily packaged in this professional way. And then like you said, along your journey, everything or most of the things that your mother was trying to do was validated by all of this
mm,
other information and knowledge. And so, what are some of those things, if you don't mind sharing, that your mother
no,
brought
not at
to the
all.
table? And we know how moms communicate. So, of course, it wasn't, this is womb healing and all of this. But if you could just share some of the cultural things that your mom did to support you in your postpartum season.
So one of the big ones was yoni steaming, womb steaming. So that was the first time that, not the, yeah, it was the first time I was hearing it. Like my mom, when she came um, with the things and she was saying, this is what we do. And my immediate reaction was like, no, I'm not, what is this? And she explained to me, I'm like, no, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. I'm not sure if the listeners know about yoni steaming, womb steaming. It's the concept of using a pot of hot water to steam the womb area. Um, and just from my background, I come from a pharmaceutical background, having trained as a pharmacist. So for me to start telling me to do these things was like, we're not doing that. And the other thing was I had a Caesar. Both my babies are Caesar babies. So with this, it seemed like, oh, that was the other thing that happened is my mom forgot the things that needed to happen for the steaming. And she was feeling so bad about it. I'm like, it's okay. I'm not doing this thing. There's no need to worry. You brought other things. So no. So those were one of the things that she spoke about, was the steaming. The second thing that she did was, when I came home, the first thing, and she reminded me that I mustn't wash my hair. And I was like, like I just gave birth to a baby. I was in theater, and I was, and I could see she was upset, but I know it sounds petty, but I'll go through what the literature I found around these things that she was sharing. And I was like, what? This is ridiculous. I can't wash my hair. So that was one of the things. And the third thing that she did was, there was a seed. I forgot the English, I don't know the English name, but um, that seed, it was boiled water. So not allowed to drink water from the tap. It was boiled water and it must be warm. So she would have flask for me. The kettle was boiling the whole day and it was warm water with those seeds. And her the line of thinking was that seeds had cleansing properties. So whatever, I think she was referring maybe to the lochia or whatever inside of our womb that didn't come out is going to cleanse, and that it prevents you, it just helps in your recovery. So for me, first of all, let's just talk about the Caesar. I was so adamant about having a natural birth that when I had the induction, it didn't progress. I was so like shocked in my mind, I would say in my body as well, that I felt that I was not in the mental capacity to, like my mom said this thing, I trust my mom, I'm going with this flow, because I was still processing this thing of I didn't give natural birth, I had a Caesar, and I was just going almost like with the flow. So those are the things that I can think of. And then like the cooking of the food and some of the food to help with breast milk. So then there was also the cultural aspect of, now with my husband, him being in South Africa with the Indian community here, they also got their own beliefs. So it was also now their beliefs, what they were, the elders in the community were sharing. So it was like a lot of things, like suddenly you, like everybody wants to tell you, but I tried like some of the things they said, and it all helped. So, and a lot of things is very similar to what my mom said. So that was very, very interesting.
So what are the seeds in your native language? What are they called?
I can't even remember. I've got the packet. My mom called it jawai. Jawai. I don't know. I think
Mhm.
that if there's show notes, I can give you the English name. So hello. Sorry, I thought
Yes, I'm here.
my
Hey.
screen just. Okay, okay. Something happened there. I was like, okay, what happened? So yeah, so that was the name, but I'll get the proper English name. But it's available at like if you have a close by Indian um spice
Grocery.
shop, I think you can get it. Yeah.
So
So but
can you share with us
yes,
what your experience was healing from? You said you had two cesareans and you were planning on a natural birth. What, even though your mom was there supporting you with these cultural remedies and these wholesome foods and everything to support you, what was that like emotionally navigating those postpartums because you had planned
hectic.
on giving birth naturally?
It was very intense for me. Um, my first, I would say my first Caesar, I felt like I was in shock. And like, I, I think for me, since it's a raw conversation, I'll just say it out as it is. Like, I'm a new mom. I feel that I understand everybody is excited to see the baby, but sometimes I feel our family members forget that this person birthed this baby. Look after me. I'm here. And I felt like that's why for me, my mom made such a big difference, because I felt that if she wasn't there to do these basic things, I wouldn't have had the mental capacity to kind of process what was going on, because it was suddenly everybody wants to come see the baby, but not thinking, oh, but like she needs space. Or just to give you an example, the moment I said I gave birth and the in-laws were coming, this auntie and uncle. And I mean, I'm trying to figure out breastfeeding, and I'm trying to feed, and this uncle's coming, and it's like awkward. And as you know, with breastfeeding, you need to be relaxed. Now it's like a stress. And for me, I felt that at the very start of my journey as a mom, I was very much a people's pleaser because I was trying to keep everybody happy, to be considerate of everybody's feelings, everybody. But when I look back, I feel I should have been more selfish because I put so much pressure under myself to be, I'm good, but I wasn't good. And how it showed up later is I wanted to still do everything myself, and a lot I started becoming very angry. And only now I understand, because it's the hormonal changes as well. There's different stages in postpartum. And I think that we don't talk enough about as women, even as friends. But I've started to become more open about it. And that's something I do with my clients is, besides preparing for fertility, I make sure they have a postpartum care plan, because I tell them my job is to make sure somebody's looking after you, because everybody's going to be over the baby, because I feel I've been through that, and it just doesn't last just after the baby is born. It goes on, because looking after a baby takes time. It taxes you on it as a person. And so I felt, for me, emotionally and mentally, it was a lot. Like, I felt very much I couldn't speak up, because I was trying to be the good person, but I was kind of not making sure I was okay. So that was the hardest part.
Yeah, I do think there's so many shifts, and we talk a lot about PMS and being moody at that time of the month, but we don't often highlight how the flushing and the adjustment of the hormones. Um, a lot of moms experience like anger and frustration
Mm,
and like sometimes even rage that they've never
mm,
experienced in their whole life, and so it can be such a daunting and scary experience if you're not prepared for what the possibilities are. Um, exiting out of that and entering into your second experience, what were some ways that you took what you learned from the first time and changed, or maybe even created some boundaries the second go around?
yes, second time around, a little bit better. What are your rights? So definitely prepared better. And funny enough, after having had my baby, the first one, through my journey in my womb healing, because I went very this whole thing into motherhood really shook me as a woman. Like, I was like, this is new to me. And I went diving and understanding like cycles and whatever. And funny enough, the irony, I went to certify as a womb steaming practitioner. So the modality my mother was telling me about, and I said, no, I'm not doing this. The women in our family do that. I'm like, nope. And there I go and learn, because I was so shy to talk about this, to also support that. I thought it's better if I just go do the certification. I can do it for myself. Nobody needs to know about it. And that was when I had for my second baby. I thought, okay, they're saying this will help postpartum so that it supports you, blah, 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 blah. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to do this. So this time around, I told my mom, I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it my way, because, like, I want to study this thing, so I'm going to do it my way. And she was actually quite surprised, I would say. And so that was the thing, was the yoni steaming. I incorporated it into my postpartum care plan. And the other thing is, I was very, very strict about having a 40 days postpartum. So there's a book, I think, called 40 Days Postpartum. But just even that, in Mauritius, it's a thing that for 40 days you stay at home, which in my first pregnancy, first postpartum, I was like, no, after 2 weeks, I was getting cabin fever. I was like, I want to go out. But so I decided, it's only 40 days, and I want to do that, because with my first pregnancy, first postpartum, I felt that it took me long to connect with my baby. And because again, I was trying to accommodate everybody, visitors, and it was the first grandchild in the family. I was just trying to be the good person, but now I realized it took me longer to bond with my baby. So I decided this time around, 40 days postpartum, yoni steaming, and I don't want to see visitors. So that I was very strict about, and my reality is, um, my in-laws make me anxious. So unfortunately, I had to face that reality and accept it for myself that I don't want to be they would just have to wait 40 days. And also with COVID, that was around the time we were pregnant in the pandemic. That added another level of anxiety in terms of, because I've worked in a hospital as a pharmacist, so I've seen a lot of things during my whole career, and I felt like I'm not taking any chance. This baby needs to build an immunity before we're having visitors, and people must wear them off. So I felt like for me, I was more brave to talk about what I needed, because that was what I needed for myself. And the biggest reason I did that was, um, a year after I had my first baby, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, which is an autoimmune disorder. And apparently, it's very common in women to have postpartum after giving birth. And I was shocked because I would say I was pretty okay with my health, but that for me um, really changed the way I approach life and health. And my biggest concern for me and the importance of implementing a postpartum care plan was not to have a flare up of the arthritis.
Yeah.
Because for me, through monitoring, it's been always hormonal. Whenever something hormonal is happening, or I'm upset about something, somehow this I had a flare up. So that was one of my biggest motivators, to have these solid boundaries so that I could look after myself, because I knew what it's like to not be well, etc., etc. So um yeah, but that that for me was a bit challenging to like have these strong boundaries, but I did it. I wasn't the most favorite person, I suppose. But also I still had the hormonal change though. Um, and I feel that not only women need to be knowing about this, but I feel partners, husbands, boyfriends, fiancés need to know about this, how to support their partner. I mean, my husband is very supportive, but if I look back, I feel like, gosh, like I was not the most pleasant person. So I feel that guys also need some kind of support or education on how can they support their partner, because what do you think about that?
No, I absolutely agree. In my birth based business as a birth doula and postpartum doula, I incorporate partners every step of the way. The conversations
Yes.
that I am having with the mom, I am having a complementary conversation. So if I am talking to someone about getting to know their body, being familiar with their base level, I am equally talking to their partner about nourishing their body so that they can be strong and sound for when it's time for them to support, but also to make sure that they're healthy so that they're stable and
Yes.
grounded. So that
Yeah,
if
yes.
hormones go crazy over here, it's just one person in this loop. And so I think it's so important to have partners just aware of the possibilities, because some people are just
Absolutely.
thrown for a loop when their partner gets really
Mm.
sharp with them, or they may not be as kind as they're used to them being, and then they go off on a tangent about that, not understanding like, hey, there's some hormones shifting here. This is going to be happening for quite some time. And so I believe that partners are very crucial to the
Absolutely.
pregnancy and postpartum and even fertility, right? Because
Absolutely. Yes.
you mentioned your in-laws making you anxious.
Mm.
And I applaud you, because that takes a really high level of self-awareness and bravery to be able to come to terms with that and then
Mm.
communicate that and then create a boundary around that for the health of yourself and for your baby. And so that's something that I think is just so important and amazing to have. And that as people are planning their, coordinating their postpartum support, that they have got to be self aware and real and honest about the people in their lives that make them anxious, no matter who it is.
Yeah, and I think, you know what, it's not an easy thing to accept, or maybe that is how I feel, and I know how would I say, I appreciate how I feel, and I like put value to it in the sense of trusting that gut feeling, because the other thing that we don't talk about is postpartum also often relationships can tend to go on autopilot. So for me, I felt for the sake of my marriage and me being a mom, I felt that was the best action to take, because I don't be in a space of to be so upset that it's putting now a pressure on my marriage, because that was more important to me than to be this um, people's pleasing person. So I felt that, I think, I, I don't know in many communities, but definitely for me, and often we're not talking about this expectation as a family members have of us, or what how we're supposed to be, but it does affect a person's mental health, and especially postpartum. And the other thing is, it's not just hormonal change just after giving birth. What shifts as well is around a year after baby, once baby turns 1 years old, sometimes there's also hormonal shifts around that time as well. And that is also um, something that people are not aware, or you don't see these nuances. But if you're used to paying a little bit of attention to, okay, I'm feeling this way, why am I feeling this way, or this thing just came out of the blue, I feel it really helps. And I'm very much with the work that I do. I Yes, I incorporate science, but a lot of things come from traditional Chinese medicine, which it seems from the Mauritian culture, a lot of things principle looks like it comes from traditional Chinese medicine, like the thing of not washing hair, for example. It's because um, apparently
Heat.
we lose a lot of heat and chi through our head. So that's one of the reasons. And also, they talk a lot about blood is so replenishing your blood is so important. So that's why the warm, nourishing food are better choices compared to cold foods, or like salads, and that, even though we consider them healthy. So yeah, I'm finding that a lot of things, these knowledge that our ancestors have, the grandmothers, the aunties, we need to make notes of these things, even if you're not having babies now, to make a note of it, because I feel there's so much wisdom that is getting lost as we try. Like, some of us will carry the knowledge of what the women in our families have done, but we feel so sophisticated nowadays that some of the things, this is what the trend is, this is what's happening on Instagram. I mean, I saw the one day on Instagram, somebody was exercising 4 weeks. I'm like, oh, I need to rest. Your uterus,
Yeah.
all your organs need to go back into place. So I feel that there's also a lot of misinformation about people what show on social media. And then it's not that it's their fault. I'm not blaming them. I'm just saying that sometimes the information out there might not be correct. Like for me, I was very mindful because I felt that, for example, incontinence after having had babies, you don't know that, gosh, like I might have start having incontinence if I don't look after myself. So for me, I wasn't in a rush to go exercise. I was just thinking, I want to make sure everything goes back where it's supposed to be before I get into exercising and blah blah blah, all of those things, because I was not just thinking of me now, but like long term, in like 10, 20, 30 years, because
Exactly.
the other side I see is prolapse. We don't talk about prolapse, but many older ladies,
I had
there you go.
that. Oh my gosh. It's crazy, and it can happen at any time. And so just because you were okay during one pregnancy or another, for me, I had prolapse with my third child. And
Mm.
it was almost as if I had a C-section and I didn't. Like I had to walk upstairs backwards. I had to massage my organs back into, oh my gosh, it was horrible. But I was doing too much and I thought I was super mom
Yeah.
because I had done it twice before. And my body was like,
Mm.
no, sit down.
Yes. So yeah, exactly that is with prolapse. It's also they talk about not enough rest and all that. So I didn't have prolapse, but I think for me having learned about it, I was like, no, I don't want that. It's fine. I'll rest those 40 days. I'll try. So I think some of the things you learn, like not say hard way, like you just become you do what you do until you know better. So I feel that my second pregnancy and second postpartum the choices I made was more because of what had happened with my first postpartum, and I learned a little bit better. And also being mindful that I had another child already, so even though she's a bit bigger, to incorporate her in that. I mean, I tell like parents who are having babies, maybe 2 year apart, for example, if your elder child will want cuddles, but maybe not lifting the baby, sit in bed, snuggle. Those are the things we're kind of talking about, practical things, because life is not perfect. We know that. Like we're saying, don't lift heavy things. But if you have a 20-kilo child that wants a hug, they might start feeling like now you prefer doing preference for the baby than them. But it's not about that. So it's about finding these subtle ways to kind of making better choices. Because um, it's not perfect, I would say. And I think for me, that was what I've learned in my postpartum. I'm so used to wanting things to be like going a certain way and realize it's not going to be perfect, but it's what I'm choosing to do about it. So, um,
Yeah.
and I think, especially if you don't have family close by, support close by, it might feel like it's okay to do a lot of the things, but you need to look after yourself, I
Yeah.
feel.
So, can you share with our audience a little bit about the work that you do? And obviously, you said you started off in pharmaceuticals. You didn't want to do the womb steaming. Next thing you know, you're certified in womb steaming, and now you are a fertility specialist. So, can you share with us about the work that you do to support folks in that?
Sure. So, with the work that I do, my zone of genius is menstrual cycles. I'm like in love with menstrual cycles. So again, I help a lot of women prepare for pregnancy by regulating their cycles, and even have helped women who are going for IVF, just supporting them to make sure nurturing their wombs. So I also do work with young girls actually coming to get helping parents prepare for menarche, their first periods, but it's more like a in-person workshop because in the work that I've done, it's been good 4 or 5 years now I'm in this space. I've learned that a lot of things with menstrual cycle comes down to our experience with our period and how we experience puberty. A lot of things come around that. That's my personal opinion. So that's why I'm very passionate about this phase as well, is supporting the next generation to kind of make help parents help their girls make better choices. So with fertility, fertility work that I do, yeah, it's helping women improve their menstrual cycles and preparing their womb if they're going for IVF so that they get pregnant faster, because I've had that experience of going off the pill and waiting 18 months for my cycle to regulate, and then found,
Mhm.
okay, I can do yoni steaming and making some other lifestyle changes, and within 2 months I was pregnant. I feel that that's my gift, and I'm very good with helping women with that. So that's the work that I do. And yeah, I can see this work will also progress one day to helping women prepare for menopause, perimenopause, because a lot of things, what's happening is with many women choosing to have kids at a later age. With many women, what I'm seeing is yes, entering motherhood, but also entering perimenopause at the same time in postpartum. And that's something we need to be very careful about, in the sense of to just have that awareness, because not only now your hormones are changing from like a motherhood perspective, but also perimenopause, because usually it's thought like early 40s. So often people like are going through perimenopause, but they don't know, and it's like it's a it's a big combo, like motherhood and perimenopause. So like I feel that's something I want to help more women also about, is if they're getting pregnant in their like late 30s, early 40s, to be very mindful of, to just be awareness, I would say. So yeah, that's the work that I do with fertility and menstrual cycles.
That is, you're saying something here, because ooh, I just met someone recently that was speaking about literally being thrown into menopause immediately after their second child. And I was like, oh, okay, like that's different. And I hadn't really considered the fact that perimenopause, like ahead of time, is gonna be in your 40s, depending on when that happens for you. But I know my great grandmother, she had her last child at 57. So
What? Amazing.
I'm listening, and then I'm thinking, oh my goodness, what a time that she was going through, because I know that menopause is right around the corner for her after having that last baby. And I never even considered, so is it two different hormone shifts then that takes place? Is there like a separate set of hormones that are affected for menopause that are for postpartum? Is that like what's happening there in our bodies?
Um, well, since it's 1 year of having had no periods, but the period leading before that is usually about 8 years of perimenopause. And usually, what happens is, in society, we're so used to saying menopause is, I'm going through menopause, but actually, what people are referring to is the perimenopause. So with menopause arriving like in, let's say, at the age of 52 is average, but if you think about 8 years, 50, what it will be about like early, like 42, 44, around that age will be perimenopause. So what actually happens during perimenopause is, the two main hormones, maybe we should start, three main hormones that basically kind of play in our menstrual cycle is testosterone, progesterone, and estrogen. So during that perimenopause phase, our estrogen level starts going low. And that's where we get a lot of different changes in our bodies, even our muscles, because though we think these hormones are only responsible for our fertility and menstrual cycle, it's actually not. It's also help with bone density, a lot of very good things for our overall health. But now, what happens during um, postpartum, like if you're breastfeeding, for example, it's prolactin, it's different. The hormones that are at play are really about nurturing and protecting and your baby related. So it's like a different, that's why for me, I feel like motherhood and childbirth, I call it a rite of passage, and I've seen other books as well. So there's like basically three rites of passages in a woman's life. That's menarche, the first period, childbirth, and then menopause. So for many women, as we're just talking about now, that they go through childbirth and then straight into this perimenopause. So I feel it's quite hard on the system, in the sense of maybe you're going to be perhaps like 1 year, 2 years, even 3 years. The one lady that I heard, she spoke about 3 years into motherhood and realizing she thought she had dementia. She was losing her mind. But meanwhile, only to go to the doctor and they do hormonal tests, you realize you're going through hormonal changes. So it is very, very hectic. And I mean,
Yeah.
I even know of people whose relationship, marriage have broken, because now women are in this hormonal state. But I was like, but that's not fair. This woman's going through a hormonal state. You guys need to understand that some things your body can change, but if it's happening on a like biochemical level, like in your body, we can't really control it except repair. So I think we need to really have this awareness as we move into future of those of us in our in this womb healing space, supporting women postpartum. to be mindful of the age and to just have that awareness that somebody could also be like in this perimenopause vibe already.
That is, and it's so important, right? Because it's so connected to folks choosing to have children later and
Mm,
saying, okay, I'm going to be more stable and I'm going to establish my career and I'm going to get all of these things in order. But then, I mean, perimenopause, like you don't know when the folks in your family are going to get menopause or when they traditionally get it. And so even in that vein, it's very individual, right? According
mm,
to like your family, what the average time is. And so I honestly, consciously, I never even connected the two. I just was like, oh, you just keep having babies until you can't. Or if you're struggling, you just get support. Like I wasn't even considering the perimenopausal influence on fertility or not,
mm,
the timing, the hormones, the symptoms, and all of that. That's
mm.
incredible. Wow,
It is, and
wow.
it's my. I mean, this topic can get like it can become a very big topic, but I feel that is why I see in the women in my community have a, I don't know if it's a disconnect with what the cycle is about, but in a nutshell, when we born, actually when we were in our granny's womb, our mother were in granny's womb, like we already had the eggs. By 7 months, the eggs is there. So when we born with certain amount of eggs, and by the time we reach puberty, a certain amount, and every month, that's why we're ovulating if we choose to get pregnant. But by a certain time, by that age of um, reaching close to that perimenopause, the number of eggs are getting less and less and less and less. And I hear you with uh, people wanting to wait later, but we're all born. When you are born, your body is born with a certain amount of eggs that will allow you to have children if you choose to. Not that we making anybody scared, but
Yeah.
so that changes a lot. And I feel that what I see in the conversations I hear, we don't connect the dots around that whole biological process in our postpartum. And there's something else I even wanted to say about postpartum, but I forgot now. Um, but yeah, that's one of the biggest thing I think we need to have to think of these hormonal changes in postpartum. I think it's a bit we're going to see it more as we move into the future and more people um, just life has changed, we have more opportunities now as women, um,
Mhm.
and different choices and all of that. So postpartum is pregnancy and postpartum is different for everybody. And the other thing also, I feel I should say that since we're having this conversation, is the world will still be there. There's no need to rush. Your health is a gift that you can give to your child. As parents, we think we want to have more things, whatever. I feel if you look after yourself, that's the best gift. That's my opinion. And I do a lot of, I'm very interested about trauma in the body, especially with women with fertility issues. But also as a parent, I try to be a mindful parent. So I read a lot or watch things around trauma. And Dr. Gabo Mate, who is a trauma specialist, he speaks about how the world has changed in the way we parent, but the gift that we can give our kids is to be happy and to looking after ourselves. And that really stuck with me. And I think in postpartum, that is, I think, underrated. We make it about the baby, but mom is very important as well.
Absolutely. And I love that. I think that is the perfect place to wrap this up is that if mama is no good, then she won't be any good for the baby. And so we really have to take care of ourselves. Could you take a few moments to share with people how they can connect with you and how they can find you?
Sure. So my website is www.redbutterfly.co.za. And my name Anusooyah Gosai. You can find me on Facebook, add me as a friend or follow me. And my Instagram is anugosai.redbutterfly. So I offer one-on-one coaching, and I've got some programs that is self-paced as well. But I love about curated having a conversation to see how I can help you. So I'll be very excited to hear from you and see how I can support you on your journey to having your pregnancy.
I love that. Thank you again so much, Anu, for joining us today and sharing with us your story and sharing just such wonderful insights into your cultural practices and your journey. And thank you to everyone who's watching this particular episode. If you have any questions, I will drop Anu's details in the show notes, but we will see you guys next time. Bye.